Welcome to Cover Book Beat. I'm your host, Roger Nichols, and today we have a real treat. Our guest, Etienne Labuschagne, is a bit of what used to be called a polymath. That is, someone whose knowledge spans many different subjects. He was born into apartheid South Africa in 1961, raised on a sugar farm until age 12. He went on to get 4 different degrees, 3 in law and 1 in Latin, all but 1 cum laude. He studied at Cambridge as well. He has served as a public lawyer for 36 years in Pretoria, South Africa, specializing in public law, a field that holds those exercising power accountable. We could use some of those here. To that end, he acted against former President Zuma on behalf of a political party when he tried to suppress a report on a corrupt relationship with a wealthy family. He was recently appointed as a judge of the High Court. Now, that would be an extraordinary career all on its own. But, as they used to say in the Ginsu Knives Head, that's not all. He's also a novelist, a painter, and now a children's book author in South Africa. His debut children's book is Bedtime Stories for Clever Kids. We're very pleased to welcome His Honor. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Roger.
Before we talk about the book, I do want to ask a bit about your background. What was it like growing up in South Africa during apartheid?
Well, I obviously look at it through the eyes of a child. I do remember my growing up on the sugar farm, but it was in a segregated community, and I did not realize what it meant at that time. It only came into sharp focus really when I grew up and realized that we had lived on a farm before that when I was just a baby. And my brother and sister, who were older than I am, they could play with the children who lived on the farm, and they learned to speak Zulu. And, well, I didn't. It was one of those consequences of being segregated. You're deprived of learning another language and getting to know people who don't look like you do. I must say that it was a bizarre time in the sense that we lived these private little lives thinking this was normal, and it wasn't. I remember I lived in high school. We lived right on the beach in Durban, and it was a white area. Now, can you imagine anything like that? I mean, this is Africa. It's so totally absurd to think that that could have been normal. Yeah. And it was only when I was about 16 that a school group, the Rotarians, brought children in leadership from all the communities together, and we spent a week together. And I must say that was the first occasion when I could rub shoulders with children my age from different cultures. And it was a bit of an eye-opener to see that, we have the same wishes, we have the same concerns about school and about what's best for our parents. We all want a good future, and we all want something good for the country. And that type of interaction was something that was just stripped away from everybody because we kept separate. It is really a bizarre thought that somebody could think a policy like that could work. But it did for years, and one grew up thinking this is normal. And then I got to university, obviously started challenging my own thinking developed. And I remember very clearly a television debate by Ted Koppel, who came from the United States to conduct interviews with people in South Africa. And he was interviewing 2 journalists, one white, one black. And Otto Krause was a journalist with The Citizen, as a newspaper, and Percy Koboza was the editor of a black newspaper. And they were going at one another during this discussion, and Otto Krause was trying to play the conciliatory role, saying his country of a lot of potential. We've got to work together. And Gqoboza would not play along. And the next day, it was reported by Ted Koppel that after the interview, Otto Krause invited Gqoboza to go for a drink. And Gqoboza said to him, "I hope you choke." And I remember that brought me to a point where I thought, for God's sake, how could this degree of resentment be built up? And how could I not have seen it and thought that this is a deep felt injustice, which just culminated in front of me? And my mind changed just there, realizing what an act of folly this entire thing was. And it took regrettably long for my eyes to open. But that just shows you how you can be shielded from what is known to everybody else. Now, I must tell you a real absurdity. I get a bursary to go to Cambridge. I arrive there, I'm 28, I'm married, I have a little boy of 1. And I walk into a stationery shop and I buy 2 postcards, one of Nelson Mandela and one of Winnie Mandela. It is the first time in my life that I've seen what they look like.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
They were banned. You could not quote them. There was no photographs of them, nothing. I immediately posted it to a friend that I thought was a right-winger in South Africa.
Wow. That is
no, the demonizing of someone you don't agree with. I mean, Nelson Mandela became the most loved person generally in this entire country. He's revered just for being larger than the small-mindedness that kept him locked up. We owe him a huge debt of gratitude. But to think that it took so long for someone like me to step into a society that is hopefully by now normal. Yeah. It's 30 years on, and it's not the same place. Yeah. The schools look very different. Interactions between children at school are much more normal. Friendships are forming the way they should. I think the South African schooling system is probably like the poster child for what can be done. If the walls come down and the barriers come down and people are treated, children are treated like children and they are educated. Now there's lots of feel-good stories around education in this country, and I think the kids are uniting as they should on things which are important to them and to the country. And I have a lot of hope for our young people.
That is great to hear. Does any of that play a part in your decision to go into law?
It was. I wasn't thinking politically. Mm-hmm. When I decided to go into law. I did want to do something which would. I wanted to use law as a power for good, and I thought it would be an instrument to help shape society, and that has proven to be my experience. The field in which I worked as a public lawyer is very much aimed at shaping society, and so I think the law. It is such a wide and a divergent field. You can find a little nook for every personality type. But I was drawn to public law, and that's what I studied into earlier when I was at Cambridge.
Amazing to that. I also want to back up and talk a little bit about the fact that you've been painting since you were quite young.
That's right.
Did somebody introduce you to that, or something you just said, I want to try that?
No, my parents had a business after living on the sugar farm. My dad started a business in Durban, and they had to keep business hours. And that meant school holidays. They were working, and I could go nowhere. So I was in an apartment on the beach, lovely as it is, but bored out of my mind. And our neighbor, an elderly lady, she was a painter, and she invited me once to just come and join her, doodle a bit. I was about 12.
Mhm.
And I thought, no, well, I've got a knack for this. I'm actually enjoying it. And then took it up, and I haven't stopped.
Well, I should say as we lead into gently into the book itself, it is beautifully illustrated, and I'm not sure what you call the style. I think of it as sort of semi-impressionistic in a way. Would that be
It's it,
appropriate?
it's deliberately impressionistic. That's the genre in which I feel comfortable. I usually try and follow light,
Mhm.
um, and light creates an impression. You don't have to go into the detail. Your eye fills in the gaps.
Mhm.
So it's not meticulous and etc. You create an impression and you leave it at that. So it's definitely impressionistic. It's the style of painting that I love. And yeah, I think I've naturally developed in that direction, but that would be an accurate description of the type of artwork that you would also see in the book.
Yeah. Then I have to say they're absolutely charming and delightful, and I'm just sorry that my grandchildren are beyond an age when that would be the appropriate thing to give them, because I would love to give them this in their back. I may do it anyway just because it's so cool. Let's talk about writing. Now, I understood that you started writing in response to a rather tragic situation in your family.
Yes, well, the storytelling first started off with my kids when they were um, each of them, when they were 5 year old, they had to undergo bilateral osteotomies to realign their legs,
Oh my
and
goodness.
they had to learn how to walk again. So they were in plaster of Paris, plaster and the casts for 2 months, and had to learn to walk all over. And they had to be occupied during that period when they could go nowhere. So I was practicing as an advocate at that time, and I had a tape recorder, so I would dictate just stories to entertain them, and they would be spur of the moment, just flights of fancy. And it sort of caught on and started developing into a theme, particularly with my daughter. She was into fairies at that time, so these stories were all fairy related. And my mother-in-law got hold of this and said, "Well, you know, she thinks they're charming. I should have them published." I said to her, "Mom, you know, I'm an advocate at the bar. Can you imagine what career suicide it would be if I were known as the one telling fairy tales?
Yeah.
Um, no one would take you seriously." So I didn't take that up at the time, but it certainly got me telling stories. And then sadly, my wife died in 2017, and it was in the process of grieving afterwards that I sort of felt adrift and lost at sea, as one does, and had to have something to look forward to. And the idea of a grandchild was an anchor for me. It was like something I'd cast into the future, and I was hoping to yank myself in that direction to meet a grandchild. And in the time that I was waiting, I thought, well, what happens if you don't make it? I thought, okay, well, in that case, I'm going to start writing stories to them in advance, starting an advanced conversation. So if I don't get to meet them, at least they'll hear my voice through stories and know that I was thinking of them. And that got me writing. And because I have so much material, sketching and painting as I do, it was natural to start illustrating them. And so I built up a stash of these stories, and then came COVID, and people were locked up in cooped up little flats with small children. I thought, well, that's a hellish idea. I'm going to send these stories to everybody that I know who has small children. I'm going to encourage them, send it to anybody else. You deserve 10 minutes of a respite at the end of a day. 10 minutes of peace, just stories, sit back, relax, your children are tired, just read something together, and hopefully there'll be a bit of fun involved in doing so. So those stories then sort of gained traction amongst a lot of people who then asked for more. And in the end, I realized that the book could serve a larger audience. So I submitted it to a publisher.
Yeah. And it's been out and it's wonderful. But you also, that was not your first book, as I understand. You also wrote a novel before that?
Yes, during COVID, I wrote a historical fiction novel on a fascinating woman who was born in South Africa, a music teacher, and who in the 60s and the 70s became a Mossad agent involved in the post-Olympics debacle, the acts of revenge, and trying to seek out the Black September terrorists who massacred the Israeli Olympic team in 1972 at the Olympic Games. And she became well known. She was very beautiful. And she spent her last years here in Pretoria. Amongst people that I never met her, but many people that I know did know her. And I received amazing stories from these people. I'll give you an example. One of my friends says that he was sitting at a table opposite her. She became well known overseas because of a debacle in 1973 in Norway, when they thought they'd tracked down Salome, who was the leader of the mastermind of the massacre, and ended up assassinating the wrong person. And she and a number of other members were incarcerated. They were tried and convicted of murder, sent to jail. And she told her story to a friend of mine at a dinner. Strangely enough, she then falls in love with her defense advocate, a Norwegian, who marries him. I mean, how can you script that? Yeah. And he's one of the top advocates in Norway. But it was a very public trial, and there was a degree of sympathy for her because they realized that it was a retaliation to something dreadful, but an innocent man died. And she mentioned at that time, and that this, what I'm telling you now, introduced the whole theme of chess into that story, because the stories, it translates as checkmate in 11. Ephraim Kishon, an Israeli author, came to visit her on 3 occasions in prison to encourage her, and they would play chess. She asked him, well, why are you so enamored with chess? He'd written books. Now, he was a heavyweight. He was nominated for an Oscar for one of his movies at that time. He was a playwright, a television series, a real heavyweight. And he said, well, he won his life in a chess match. And she said, no, you've got to tell me the story here. And that I had to go and research. He was born in Hungary, and as a 14-year-old, he and his family were interned as Jews in Birkenau. And it was a penal camp where, for minor infractions, everybody got put on parade, and they would tap every 10th person on the shoulder, put them against the wall, and shoot them in front of everyone. This kid, a 14-year-old, had to try and survive in those circumstances. And there was this one sadistic guard who was playing chess, and as he was passing, he pulled him over, put a gun to his head, and said, this man across me says that I'm in checkmate, get me out of this or I shoot. And he looked and saw that he'd missed a pawn, and he got him out of checkmate. And from there on, this guard has this dependence on this man, on this kid. The next parade, he's the one doing the counting. He gets to the kid. The kid is number 10. He skips him and he taps number 11. So number 11 objects because he can count. So this guy pulls out his gun, shoots him on the spot, looks at the boy, and winks at him. Wow. What a terrible thing to have happened. So this marked this man's life, and that's why chess, and I thought, no, chess is going into this story. And just before that, the games, there was this Boris Spassky, Bobby Fischer world championships in Reykjavik, and in one of those games, Fisher beats him in 11 moves, and those 11 moves are the 11 chapters of the book.
Oh my goodness. That's beautifully laid out. And is that book available in English at the moment?
Well, it has been translated, but not published.
Okay. Well, let me know when that comes out because I definitely want to read that one as well.
Well, it's an amazing thing. Yeah.
Let's finally get to the book that you were here to talk about because it is extraordinary. I kind of got the Aesop's Fables vibe from it as I was reading through because you have talking animals and inanimate things. How many of these were ones that you had originally written and rewrote for the book, or they're all original for the book?
When I read them, I didn't have a book in mind. I was writing stories as my thoughts were triggered, and it took strange things to trigger it. I wish I could pinpoint it, but there would be something which just got me going, and I had a collection of 11 at that time. I have many more, and so I have a lot of material. I can put out 3 books at the moment. But those 11 books, they were some of those that I had disseminated during COVID, and I thought, well, these are the ones that people liked, so let's see if it works as a book. But yeah, as I say, it wasn't deliberately put together as a book.
It's interesting because then what you have is you have a focus group that's tested them already, basically.
It's yes, that was it. Yeah.
I think the thing that attracted me was the very first story in the book. I was very profoundly moved by it because of the number of different aspects you had to talk about freedom. Now, I don't want to give away everything, but I will talk about this one story because it's a great example of. So they're talking back and forth, and they talk about a bird in a cage, a bird outside a cage, but with its wings clipped so it can't fly. And the thing that really got to me, which a circus elephant who had been staked out as a young elephant, and these days is a grown, but the stake represents he can't move because he knew he couldn't do it when he was younger.
That's right.
And also,
he's forgotten to be free. Yeah.
Yeah, and then a girl in a wheelchair who is not affected by it at all and is having a great time. They push her over a bump and she goes, whee! All of those different aspects of freedom. And the conclusion, and I'm going to share this, I apologize for doing this to you, but this conclusion is sometimes a cage isn't a cage, and sometimes the only cage is in your mind. That's not only cool, it's very profound. And I think it has lots of lessons for us.
Because that one little theme developed organically and demonstrated the different angles, different types of freedom. That's why I call the book Bedtime Stories for Clever Kids. It's not just a single narrative. There are layers to it, and those various aspects of the different types of freedom, each of them introduce a topic that parents can take up with their kids and talk about these things. And so the layered themes, I thought, was something there for bright kids to pick up and for parents to explore, because there's a lot to talk about.
Well, one of the things that you talk about, you also do, kind of a vibe of Disney, who would illuminate bed sticks and candlesticks and whatnot, but you also have a chessboard, which obviously figures into some of your other themes. And that is interesting because I'm thinking about Flatland, the story about the characters who can only exist in the 2 dimensions. So there's a lot of references in here that seem pretty fascinating to me. Were you conscious of these at the time, or did you look back and say, oh, that's cool?
What I knew when I started that story was that the chessboard was going to be my main character, and he felt trapped because his world is only in 2 dimensions, but he feels a chess game played in a dimension that he can't access. It's in a different dimension. So he feels and wants to learn more about a different dimension. So the whole story is about the concept of dimensions and how the word changes and the context changes for just that one single word. For the chessboard, it's a third dimension that he's longing to enter. A little boy plays chess with a chess master, and the chess master says, "I want to lift your game. I want to teach you strategy. I want your game to be elevated into another dimension." So there's another concept. And the concept then develops, and it becomes a little life lesson, because the boy loses the match, and he's crestfallen. And the man says, "Your best is good enough. You played well, and you will learn from your mistakes." Then the child starts becoming introspective, and discloses that this game is over. Yes, his game is over, but his dad said it's a game over for them, because he's lost his job and they have to leave the country. And now the man uses the chess master uses chess to try and give this child hope. And he shows him a painting, an old painting between the devil and the chess master. And if you look at the chessboard, it looks as though the devil is about to win. And he wants the little boy to look at that chessboard to see what is going on. And it upsets the boy, because he thinks the devil's going to win. He doesn't want this to happen. He says, "No, look." And he looks, and then he sees that the king has one more move. And that's what he's trying to teach this child. The king always has one more move. Tell your dad. And that becomes a life lesson for him to equip this boy for adversity, for the boy to take it to his father. And all of this is being played out on top of a chessboard, who gets excited about the concept of outside. What does it mean to be outside? That's another dimension that he realizes exists. And so it comes back to the chessboard. The whole theme of dimensions goes from a physical dimension into a strategy, into a life skill.
It's beautiful and beautifully done. And again, this is something that you can read to your grandchild, and when they grow up, they will find a whole different set of meanings in it. And as you age and your life experience changes, you'll keep finding meanings in this. To write like this, to me, involves a poetry of sorts. Every word matters.
It does. I think you're quite right. In the field in which I have practice, words are my currency. I used it to earn a living. And when it comes to children, I have to use the same currency, but in a very different way. And I have to think creatively on how I can take a child on a little journey that looks simple on the face of it, but suddenly it becomes profound. And this child has to stay with it in order to understand that this word is going to lead you somewhere. Or a thought that will lead you somewhere. Now, I must say, it's a confession. I don't have this all figured out when I write the book, when I write the story. I only have the opening line, or I have the concept. And that's what makes it exhilarating for me to write, because I don't know where it's going. So I start off with, and I just literally, as a stream of consciousness, it starts developing, and the words and the thoughts take me on and the story develops, and a character emerges, and you have a conflict that goes into it, and you try and resolve it. And in the process, all sorts of things are opening up for you to write about, to bring different stories in. And in that process, you trigger life truths that you did not anticipate in the beginning. And they start informing this story in a way that is, I think it's just amazing for me, although I'm writing it, to see an end product that came from something as simple as the opening line. And that's merely a creative process. And it makes it a joy to write. for me. I love writing stories for children. It brings me great pleasure. And in the process of writing it, I obviously try and introduce humor, because firstly, I'm going to entertain myself, and then I'm going to entertain the parents. And it's often playing on words and on meanings and throwing in the odd joke. Um, yes, the story about the ducks, you might have seen that one.
Yes.
What do you call a little goose? And Mr. Mallard, the duck, says, well, he thinks it's a gosling, and Mrs. Mallard has a picture of Ryan Gosling in her head, and she thinks, no, that can't be right. So the parents will pick up on that little nuance, bit of lateral thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it's a riot. I just enjoy the process.
It is, and any story in which they're racing an alligator as well, it has to be cool. I don't want to give away too much. One of the things I often ask authors is, what do you hope that people take away from it when they close the book? And I think you've got a whole lot of stuff that people are going to take away from this.
Well, I think what I would like them to take away is that I can use stories like this to speak to my child on topics that I can help to educate my child on things that I would not otherwise think of talking about. It hands themes to parents on a platter to discuss with their children, which are really important. The whole concept of validation, or of just being kind, or not being too full of yourself. And well, some of the stories are little adventures. So I think what I want is this bedtime is a special time for parent and child, and a book like this can open up a treasure trove for topics for discussion and exploring. Kids will be enriched, and parents will feel that they've made a contribution.
Well, I believe you've already made a contribution to my life as well. This 76-year-old guy who is greatly appreciative of it. From now, what happens next? You said you had more stories. I can't wait to see some more. What's the progress from here?
Well, I obviously would like some feedback, and my publisher will obviously also give me feedback. The book is featured on the Frankfurt Book Fair. It's been at the London Book Fair, and hopefully it gets some traction, all over the world. And as soon as I have the green light, the next one is ready. I can download it and send it to the publishers if they're interested. So that's it. What's nice is the work has already been done, and but in the meantime, I'm still writing stories. I've just returned from France, and yes, I had a nice opportunity there. I was in Carcassonne, and it's all very medieval and Knights Templarish. So I had to write a story in which I had a young slave, a young girl, a serf, and the Rat King. The Rat King was obviously dressed in armor like a little musketeer and very French. So that was a little fun that I had recently.
Obviously, we're looking for. I am looking very much forward to buying the slipcase multi-volume version once they're all are placed out. So I appreciate it a great deal. You've been very generous with your time today. Any thoughts that I have not mentioned that you want to make sure get out to our listeners?
Look, I think that if I would urge parents is not to squander bedtime. My book is a tool for you to talk to your children, but remember that is the time when they are most receptive. They are tired but receptive, and you as parent, know parents are tired too, but don't let that opportunity be lost to building little gems into your children at a time when they can actually receive them.
That is beautifully done and beautifully said, and thank you so much for your time. Our guest today has been Etienne Labuschagne. I'm going to get that right, Labuschagne. Eventually, we'll get that right. The book is absolutely delightful. It is bedtime stories for clever kids, and I do encourage you to go out with the highest possible recommendation. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.